Live tonight from the virtual Atlanta Motor Speedway, it's time for the second round of the 2019 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series, powered by Sim Racers for Mental Health. Tonight, we're at Hotlanta for 125 laps in the sun, as the top drivers try and get to victory lane on the iRacing Esports Network and on LSR TV. I'm Justin Prince, alongside me in the booth tonight for the next 125 laps is David Schildhaus. Brett Wheeler will be in the production truck for tonight's action to take us from green flag to checker flag. Of course, this is a 1.5 mile circuit, exactly 1.54 miles here in Hampton, Georgia, but known for its very tough racing and very abrasive racetrack here, David.
Thanks, Justin. Good to be on the call here with you for the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series at Atlanta. Yes, this old, worn-out surface, one of the favorites for the drivers to come to and really flex their muscles. The guys like to slip and slide around in these cars, all this horsepower. You really got to manage it. You go from 200 miles an hour down the straightaways down into the 160s in the corners. You really got to bleed off a lot of speed, and the guys that manage their equipment the best usually are the ones that stand the best chance to go to victory lane.
Indeed, right now, qualifying currently going on along with the driver's mean for the next 3 minutes. So far, 31 drivers have set their qualifying times in this 110-degree track temp circuit. Air temp 88 degrees and partly cloudy skies for today's action. The fastest time, Andrew Farinars, is on the pole for the time being with a 30.350, just 4 1/1000ths ahead of Brian Macklin. Still 3 drivers set to record times. The slowest on the track so far, a 31.2 from Tom Moreno. So, of course, as you talked about, crazy speeds, and of course, a very tough racetrack, especially for a track essentially known as the start of the real season, going from a super speedway like Daytona to a 1.5 miles in Atlanta.
When we think back to a week ago, some would call a surprising win or the unexpected win for Jonathan Cadell in that last lap dash to the line with his teammate. A really exciting moment and a great way to kick off the season. But yes, now we come off the super speedway and get to the real meat and potatoes of this schedule, the 1.5 mile ovals, which make up a large portion of this 36 race schedule here at Atlanta. Really have to take care of the equipment, as I said earlier. But beyond that, it's an entirely different discipline to run here at these 1.5 miles. That high lane is going to be very inviting for a lot of drivers to go up there because of the momentum that you can keep up there. And it seems to be a little bit easier on the tires, but the approach to oval racing is certainly much different than what you would get at the super speedways here at Atlanta. An early test for these drivers to see where they stack up for this long season ahead.
Absolutely. The exact distance today, 192.5 miles for today's race. And of course, with that distance, it's expected to be at least a 2-stopper on fuel at least. The max fuel run estimated to be at the most 65 laps, realistically 63. However, it's the question again if the tires last that long. And we'll have to see still a minute to go in qualifying. But of course, we've talked about the abrasiveness and the speeds. Again, though, this is a track that, with this setup for today's race, can really eat up a right front tire, as Jay Horton might be trying to figure out as he works his way as one of the final drivers to try and get some experience on this racetrack.
Taking care of that right front tire has to be job number 1 for all the drivers in the field here tonight, because that right front dictates exactly how that car is going to handle, especially at these high speeds. Going through the corners, that right front starts to fade. All of a sudden, you're drifting up the racetrack either into the competitor or into the wall, even worse. And if you sustain damage, particularly that front end area of the race car, it's going to make your long night even longer. So, got to take care of the equipment and keep those 4 tires as in good condition as possible when you go through these long runs. If it is indeed going to be a 2-stop event, got to maximize the grip throughout those long runs. The drivers that manage that the best, those will be the ones up front. I expect to see tonight, Justin, comers and goers throughout the field.
We'll see who are the comers and goers are today as the drivers get set to take the starting grid. Let's take a look at your starting grid 10 at a time for tonight's coverage of the second round of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series, powered by Sim Racers for Mental Health. Andrew Farinars is on the pole tonight with a 30.350. That's just 4 1/1000ths of a second in front of Brian Macklin. Daniel E. Eberhardt will start in the second row, along with the famous streamer YouTuber in his cockpit today in P4. Thomas George will start alongside his teammate and Jonathan Cadell. They went 1-2, the teammates did, for their team to be able to come away with a close finish at Daytona by 8/1000ths of a second. Rhett McBride starts off in 7th, with Scott McClendon rounding out the top 8. And rounding out your top 10 starting spots, Jeremy E. Miller will start alongside Kyle Kammer in the 8 machine. David?
Inside row number 6 will be the number 4 of Anthony Fredericks. It is outside Greg Omo in the 91. 13th will be Brandon Johnson. Skylar Shackelford will roll off from the 14th position. Jay Horton 15th. Eric Stanford in 16th. Andrew T. Jones will come from 17th. Jared Astrop from 18th. Joker Johnson, great name there, in 19th. And Sean Kalis will round out the top 20.
Rachel Whiteford said the same thing about Joker Johnson's first name last week. Bryce Whitson Jr. will try and have a better finish than last week, starting off 21st, with Jeremy Bazemore starting alongside him. Brian Lambert takes the number 55 machine from the 23rd spot today, with Brad Bohr in 24th. Kurt Redenberg starts 25th, with Nicholas Caldwell in his number 2 ITC machine, starting alongside him. Josh Gerlach starts alongside the 22 of John Fowler, with Brian Spriggs, along with Scott Brotherton rounding out the top 30. Your remaining spots: Tom Moreno with a 31.263, the slowest recorded time. 3 drivers elected to start in the back for today's race: Brian Chambliss, Jeremy Rittenberg, and Matthew Miller. Overall today, 34 drivers will be set to take the green flag for the next 125 laps. David, your thoughts before we hit the green flag and head towards the restart zone?
All these drivers getting ready, going through their final checks and preparations on the pace lap and preparing themselves for 125 laps here around Atlanta. It's going to take a lot of patience. You're going to be tempted to go faster than you really want to, and that's all that's going to do is just abuse the equipment, use up that right front tire, and make the long run really painful. So if these guys can keep their wits about them, not get into too many incidents, we can see some really interesting strategy play out here at Atlanta as the masters of the long run can come to the front no matter where they start in this field, Justin.
Absolutely. The question is, which ones will be able to get to the front? Which ones will be able to handle the restarts today? Which ones will have the greatest pace to get to the victory lane circle tonight? Andrew Farinar starts as the control car on the inside of the red number 88 machine. Brian V. Mecklin starts on the outside in his number 30 Toyota, the black and red machine. As they head into today's restart zone, the pace cars off the track. They head into the green flag area. We're underway for the second round of the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series at Atlanta. And a clean start for Farinars along with Eberhard. Both of them already down to the bottom.
Saw a lot of wheel spin in that restart zone as guys try to get up through the gears. That's something to keep an eye on as well as this race goes on. If anyone stays out on old tires, how will they handle his restarts? But look at this. Daniel Eberhard already down to the bottom side, moving underneath Andrew Farinars going into turn 3. They're going to be side by side coming back to the stripe for the first time.
Farinars having to get out of the gas, in fact, to try and avoid the left rear of Farinars. That loses his momentum as Farinars gets a bonus point. He leads the first lap of the day. Jason Jacoby trying to take advantage of the checkup from Mecklin, meanwhile, as he moves up to 3rd.
We had contact a little bit further back of the pack. Kyle Kammer in the number 8. Barely held on in turns 1 and 2. I don't know how he saved it way down onto the apron, but he's able to hold on to control down in turn 3 under assault from Anthony Fredericks now for that 9th spot, but a nice save for the driver of the number 8 as their single file ahead of him. Andrew Farinars continues to pace, but these guys seem to be tiptoeing, walking on eggshells right now in these opening laps.
Yeah, right now, a lot of drivers making mistakes. Jeremy Miller nearly slammed the wall and checked up everyone. 12th on back. Hello. As Greg Omo gets to his inside. Omo had some strong pace for parts of the race at Daytona last week. He's currently trying to battle just outside the top 10. But again, some of these drivers got to be careful, as you talked about, with the pace, walking on eggshells, not just for losing it, say, in the quad oval, but also trying to make sure you don't hit the wall in the corner exits and corner entrances.
A very easy mistake to make here, as you see everyone definitely riding that bottom lane. That's where you want to be right now. We'll see that groove widen as the run goes on. The track takes on more rubber with these dynamic surfaces. That's certainly going to be a benefit to the drivers, but right now everybody wants to be on the bottom side, as I see a good side-by-side battle for about the 6th position. Looks to be the 51 of Scott McClendon up on the high side, defending from Rhett McBride there in the number 5. So they'll go single file once again, put McClendon up to 7th.
McClendon up to 7th. That was the battle for 7. Now it is for 6th. as Jonathan Cadell with Steel Horse Racing, trying to follow behind his teammate, and George will lose his spot to McClendon. Also up on the rise is as well a Steel Horse Racing machine. That's number 5 of Brett McBride.
We got wrecked down the back straightaway. I see a number of cars involved, but one of Jeremy.
Yes, big one on the back stretch, as you said. Jared Ostrup involved, Sean Callist, Jeremy Bazemore. It's off the surface, though, no caution. We stay green. That really mixed things up for 3 drivers at least. Let's take a look at your race replay.
Unbelievable. That doesn't bring out the yellow flag, but to your point, off the racing surface, this starts way ahead of Sean Kalis. Looks like the number 1 of Jeremy Bazemore gets clipped from the 21 of Brandon Johnson off at turn 2, turns him head into the outside wall, back down the racing surface, and as everybody scatters behind them, Kalis, nowhere to go, trying to avoid, runs into the 11 of Jared Astrop, and it was on from there.
And that ends up destroying 3 cars again. Stay green. Kalis is in front of the race leaders now in live action because he's completely lost the front bumper and the rear bumper. He'll stay out of the way of Farinars, Eberhardt, and Jacoby, who will pull away in the top 3. But everyone else able to get by cleanly, though, with that incident down the backstretch, as mentioned.
Yeah, ugly incident there, and unfortunate that doesn't bring out the yellow flag for those guys, at least give him a chance to get caught up. For Sean Kalis, I think that's going to be the end of the night for him. Way too much damage for that number 43 to sustain him going forward to complete all the laps. As we come back to the action, I see a good side-by-side battle once again. The 51 of Scott McClendon working the high side, trying to get past Thomas George, as he did around Jonathan Cadell, who's since lost a position to the number 8 of Kyle Kamer. So good side-by-side battle there for 5th and 6th, 7th and 8th as well. We keep running down the front straightaway here to keep an eye on this battle. McClendon holding on and getting past, and McClendon using that high side to great effect to get these positions, and that's really going to be the key here tonight. The guys that can use that high side go up there early, keep getting positions as this fight continues between Cadell and Kamer. Nice battle down the back straightaway. Kamer moves ahead for the time being into turn 3. He will clear Jonathan Cadell, so put Cadell back to 8th.
And a lot of good battling across the racetrack for sure, and this was what we talked about a little bit. We expect these kind of battles at a track like Atlanta with a setup like this. While it is a bit tight, it's also a stable setup for this week that many drivers seen for at least the first 35 or so laps, give or take, that allows for a lot of side-by-side action, and for the best drivers who are able to conserve in the early going to make those passes if they can get to the left, to the right rear quarter panel of the cars.
That's a bold move to make as well, because you're putting a lot of trust in your fellow competitor that they know that you're out there and they're not going to come up from their normal unwinding of the wheel in the mid-corner portion as they go towards their exit. So you stick the nose to the right rear of a guy, you're really putting a lot of faith that he's not going to run up the hill and expect you to lift because he's in the power of position there. So a good strategy to try and get a position away, as we've seen guys like Scott McClendon do that already, but as the run goes on, it gets harder and harder as these cars slip and slide to hold that car on the bottom if somebody's passing. You really got to get out of the gas, and that can lead to incidents down the road.
It can indeed at this point, and so far, the best of the best so far in the first 10, 11 laps. They've been able to pull themselves a bit of a gap, essentially. Currently about a 20-car group, essentially towards the front. Then it's a bit of a gap back to 21st. That is right now Brad Bohr. That leaves essentially a second pack that's essentially formed up after that incident with the rest of those drivers. Top 3, and Brian Macklin essentially has pulled away from everyone else, though, based on that said pace alone at this point. Now, the question is, of course, or the main thing, though, I should say, of course, is you got to remember, Farinars, of course, last year's champion, was dominant in the series. 10 victories and 30 races on his way to the championship at Homestead. Then you have a lot of newcomers also mixed in for this year's group, battling along with these final 4 drivers that we've been seeing throughout the early portions of the season.
It's always one of the most exciting things about a new season, some of the names that have moved on to go race elsewhere, and some of the new names that have come into the series to try and stake their claim to the championship and take it away from the incumbent guy like Andrew Farinars, who's done a great job and is currently out front, has been leading since the drop of the green flag here now on lap 14. Can't update Jason Jacoby there in third, has lost touch a little bit of the top 2. Daniel Eberhardt doing a great job just riding in the tire tracks of that 88, sort of lockstep formation all the way around this racetrack. biding his time. These two have raced against each other a long time, Justin. They know each other quite well. So no surprise to see that number 90 just sitting and riding for the time being.
Remember, he came away third in the championship in the final window of things. Of course, that was, of course, with the final four, essentially, at a Homestead, coming away as the third lowest scoring car in that championship. Had 3 victories last season, 11 top 5s, 13 top 10s, as he has to go around Astrop as he moves up to the high side. Still, though, that top 2 pulling on away for the time being. However, remember, Kyle Camero, if we can go back to him, remember he had that tight situation having to save his car? Well, he does have a slight bit of damage on the right front. He's now dropping back, forcing Cadell to actually get out of the gas.
Yeah, good heads-up maneuver there by Jonathan Cadell to see what was happening, get out of the gas and save his race car. Still way too early for that sort of stuff because we had another spinner down the back straightaway going into turn 3. The leader's about to work past them right now, trying to get an eyeball on who that was.
That's Matthew Miller. That's Matthew Miller.
Yep. Down on the apron, out of the way.
He's destroyed the left front of his car from that spin, it appears, against a green. And it looks like it was in side-by-side battling where just lost it down the backstretch in the end for Matthew Miller, which can happen here if you end up overdriving, especially at this portion of a run.
He was so close to saving that car as well. Just got a little bit loose off of 2. Thought he had it straightened out as he worked underneath the 42 of Tom Morano, but just couldn't quite hold on to it. The car jerked back to the right ever so slightly, and he just could not keep up with the steering. Grazes the inside wall pretty hard with that left front for the number 78 of Matthew Miller. He's on pit road getting service. It's going to be a long night for him.
Long night for some as well, potentially. McClendon, meanwhile, just moved up into the top 5. Last time by for McClendon, he was having a 32.442. That is still 4/10 off the pace of the top 2 today. Everyone else has just been not able to keep up the pace from Farinard and Eberhardt today. Both of them are still in the 32 flats in the early going of this race, approaching lap 20, as McClendon still deals with Georgia to his inside.
Scotty McClendon is the guy on the move, and he's been doing it all up on the high side. That bright yellow number 51 doing a great job, but now under assault from Thomas George. We took a position away from not too long ago. George stuffs it down on the bottom, sort of rides right around that first seam, goes down to the bottom, get a good clean run off the corner. But you see just how those 2 lanes work as the 51 bobbles slightly on exit. Got to be real careful up there when you're on the high side. That banking runs away real quick, and all of a sudden you're onto the flat of the back straightaway. If you got wheels still turned into it, you can be in bad shape quick. But for McClendon, holds on, will fall back to 6th for the time being.
Just 20 laps in as a huge bobble from George as he moves to the inside. That was a good save, but there is that point we're talking about on driving on eggshells. You can easily, especially as the tires really heat up, lose control at this kind of a racetrack through the quad oval. It may sound ridiculous to lose control in the quad oval or down a straight, but the car can just spin or bounce around out of control just at a snap of a finger.
It's an easy thing to do. There's so much horsepower, 850 plus horsepower going to the rear wheels of these cars. Anytime you turn it, it's just trying to break traction, especially on this relatively flat front straightaway. When you're trying to do a double bend like that with no banking to help you, you're asking a lot of this car, especially as those tires wear, the grip runs away as well. So definitely something to manage, and it's no stroll going down the front straightaway. Heck, even down the back straightaway, we saw some issues there. Especially for the driver of the 78, Matthew Miller had his own set of problems just on the flat. So Atlanta Motor Speedway can throw a curveball at you in a number of places, front straightaway, back straightaway included.
On board with the 19 machine at the moment on the racetrack in these tight battles across the circuit. Of course, that number 19 we're referring to is Eric Stanford, who's in that Ford Fusion, working the outside, hitting the right rear that time of McClendon. It ended up checking up Stanford, but again, that is very tight quarter racing. And they're really getting tightened up and reaching lap traffic too. That can really take away the outside line potentially for a lot of these cars in a moment.
This is getting down to the tense moments now. 23 laps into this run. The cars are really slipping and sliding around the racetrack. Everybody's still trying to run that bottom lane, but I see cars push up. Look at that! The 9 of Tom George off of turn 2 nearly lost control as they come up on a slower car. He'll get by him, but barely off of the exit of turn 2. A little bit of drama there as he tried to stay on the bottom. way too much speed to try and pass somebody. Now Scotty McClendon will line it up and try and do the same maneuver. A whole line of cars behind them trying to get past.
And there's that speed difference for the damage, going 162 at the stripe. The rest of the drivers, 180 plus. That is how much, of course, damage can play a major factor, and that has allowed a gap for George because he was the quickest to get by. Although, as you mentioned, a bit sketchy. As Stanford has a sketchy straight, Cadell's going to take advantage to the outside, moving as high as he can to get away from Stanford.
That nice-looking natty light Toyota Camry working around the high side off of turn 4. Jonathan Cadell trying to get a little bit of a toe down the front straightaway from McClendon as well. Cadell will clear him. Let's put Jonathan Cadell back up to the 7th position as, yeah, these guys definitely moving all over the racetrack. It seems to be on corner exit, Justin, where they're having some of the biggest issues when they transition off the banking back to the relatively flat straightaways.
Absolutely agree with you, and that's where we're seeing some of these issues as you talked about. And now that's where, if you're one of those drivers that can handle those conditions or feather the throttle enough to be able to not have it spin, or in some cases, embrace the drift, it might be where some drivers might gain the best time. And so far, we've seen some crazy amounts of time being gained by Bryce Whitson Jr. in the 00, plus 10 spots since the drop of the green flag 25 plus laps ago.
Doing a nice job moving through the field as he starts to work over Skylar Shackelford in the number 12, the Wrangler machine. Oh, Shackelford out of control. He'll collect. Whitson down to the inside wall again off the racing surface. Whitson back up into 3. Look out, cars coming through, and they're still wrecking.
Caution is out. Cars are spinning and locking up the brakes. Joker Johnson involved. Astrop destroyed. And a huge drift from Anthony Fredericks to lock it up and avoid getting hit on contact while locking up the brakes. Our first caution of the day on lap 27, as that will mix things up with the strategies. It looks like guys like Andrew T. Jones also got the worst of it in that big one.
Really big mess here, and we saw as we were watching that battle for the number 12 of Shackelford, just lost control going down the back straightaway. Rear end started moving around. He couldn't keep up with the steering. Carries it down into the 00 of Whitson, and they come back up on the racing surface. Always very dangerous when those cars bounce back up. And from there, everyone trying to evade, nowhere to go as they work through. And I see the 4 of Anthony Fredericks was involved. Astrop once again involved. The 6 of Jay Horton went down through the grass as he collected the 11 of Astrop, and a lot of cars collected behind them.
Yeah, and the biggest drift of them all to avoid significant damage had to again be Fredericks if you looked at things closely. He checked up and got hit from behind by Astrop, and nearly got hit by 2-3 cars look on board as he ends up going for a wild ride after the contact from behind and nearly gets hit by the 23 machine, nearly gets hit by Andrew T. Jones, nearly also got hit by a couple different cars as he got back and going with just damage on the right front, but very bad damage as well in the left rear.
Looks like, as you can see, he was punted from behind pretty well as he slowed down for the wreck, and unfortunately, the driver behind him, that was the 11 of Astrop, didn't quite slow down at the same pace. So for Anthony Fredericks, trying to do the right thing and try to get slowed down, got a free ride through that wreck, so a little more damage to the rear end of the Rockstar machine as well. Wild ride, big wreck there in turn 3, but a lot of cars come down pit road to take advantage of this caution flag.
Again, first caution comes on lap 27 of 125 laps. Everyone getting fresh tires for the pit cycle, and before that caution flag, Andrew Farinars was pulling away in bunches from Daniel Eberhardt, setting some of the fastest laps of the race on the track at the time. That while Eberhardt, Jacoby, Macklin, and Stanford in the top 5 to close back on up, but again, a significant crash. As we're back live for the action as everyone follows behind the pace car. Skylar Shackelford's been given an end of longest line for the crash down the backstretch for losing control on that said backstretch you've seen with the contact. That started it all with Whitson Jr. It's just unfortunate because it seemed like Shackelford was starting to get his car into a pace before then, and Whitson Jr. was starting to look like he was about to creep in the top 10 and try and get that pass done.
It's definitely something that we'll have to keep an eye on going forward now, Justin, knowing that around 20 to 25 laps, these guys really started having issues on the straightaways more than they had in the corners. So it's something for them to manage. You said that, you know, we could expect to see upwards of 60 laps or so on a tank of fuel. I'm not sure the tires are going to allow them to even get 2/3 of the way there. when we think about what we've just seen through this first run. So as a driver now, these guys have to sort of reassess their strategy of what they've got up to this point. I'd say maybe the 88, the 90, or the guys up in the top 5 were struggling as much as maybe the mid-pack and the back of the pack, but certainly a new layer to this race has been uncovered, and the fact that the tires are giving up so much, these guys can't even get down the straightaways.
Technically, it's a new layer from previous seasons when you think about it. Remember back, though, a couple of years ago, as the one-to-go signals given to the drivers, the strategy on the iRacing service here at a track like Atlanta used to actually be go and put in less amount of fuel for the start, go to 33 laps, no further, and go and pit every 33 laps. That was at the time before you were mandated to have a full 18.69 gallons at the start of the runs. Now these days, a lot of teams try and aim for 40 to 50 laps, give or take, and try and go from there to try and have the best tire runs. We aren't going to see that chance to see quite yet, but that still is the realm of possibility. And if drivers go 50 laps, that is just nearby that range to make it on just one more stop, because the time of the caution potentially very close, though.
Something that these drivers will have to keep in mind. I know for a lot of guys, they might be worried. They're probably feeling lucky that they weren't the one who went spinning down the back straightaway for a couple of the close calls that we had, but nonetheless, the field's formed, ready for our first true restart of the race.
Andrew Farinar's once again the control car in his Dale Jr. Tribute number 88 machine on the inside line. Once again, it's Eberhard on the outside. Off and away we go out of the restart zone. We're back going racing at Atlanta Motor Speedway. A good start for the top 3, but the battle starts to form up as Eric Stanford tries to take that number 19 to its highest point of the race so far. He's battling for 4th spot.
He will fall back into line behind Jason Jacoby. He'll poke out a line one more time, trying to make the move down in 3. Best time to gain positions right now on the restart where the tires are fresh. Nobody really out of control here, but you can make up a lot of spots. But Jacoby so strong through the middle portion of that corner. Nothing doing for Macklin. He'll have to fall back in line as once again, no surprise, Scotty McClendon back in 9th gets another position away, this time from Greg Omo. So move McClendon up to 9th as they go single file.
Still single file. Macklin had the best start of everyone and has been getting the best run so far since the drop of the green out of turn number 2. The thing is, though, he's been losing that time, it seems, through turn 3 and 4, that he's been gaining off the exits. Do you think that's just the case of driver, or is that a case of maybe burning up a little too much stuff in the first 2 corners, then having to back off and cool off those sud tires in 3 and 4?
I think you look at Atlanta and, you know, it looks similar, but the 2 ends of the speedways are very, very different.
Yes.
You approach them very differently. So for a driver, they may prefer one end of the speedway over the other, might feel more comfortable driving one end harder than the other, as well as I'm still keeping an eye on that yellow 51 McClendon. He got 1 position on the high side by Rhett McBride. Now he works underneath Jonathan Cadell. So 2 spots in 1 lap for Scott McClendon. He's up to 7th. Apparently for him, he likes both ends of the speedway.
Some drivers like that if they can get the car handling just the right way to get it to work on both sides of the speedway. That's for 7th, by the way. Rhett McBride as well is still in the 9th spot, looking to try and make a spot. Also challenging for 2nd, Jason Jacoby passes Eberhard on the outside line.
That was a power move from the number 3. Great job for Jacoby. Gets that spot away from Daniel Eberhard and now wedges himself between the two who have been pacing this field for much of the first 34 laps. A lot of pace now from Jacoby. Once again to the high side in 1. Just sails it off in there. Really hooked up in that middle groove. Able to get back to the gas and will give himself a great launch off of 2. A much better launch than Farinar's does. So look at these two scooting down the back straightaway. New life coming from Jason Jacoby.
Remember, Jacoby was the driver that was in 3rd the entire run last time, but dropped back to where Eberhard and Farinar's both were on the racetrack by 0.3 of a second each time around. This is his perfect chance to try and not only take the lead, but of course try and get a bonus point for the standings so far. He tries to run on the inside line, gets a bit of a run. Farinar stays on the outside, Jacoby to the inside. This time, though, a bit later on the brakes for Renards to take that outside line, able to clear him out of 3 and 4.
Not the best way to do it going into 3. It's really hard. A shallow entry there is a tough way to get through that corner. It'll absolutely kill the speed all the way around, as you saw there. Jacoby falls back by about a car length. all the way through that corner. He'll have to gather back up and try once again. He got a great run off of 2 last time, which set that up, just nowhere to go with the run. This time, he's about a car length back still. We'll have to rethink that strategy as he gets to the back bumper of Reynars the next time by. Might have to go to the outside. Certainly nothing doing on the inside lane in 3 and 4.
Indeed, right now he's still following on back for now, trying to take a bit of a higher exit, it seems. And it looks like now he might have burned up a little too much trying to go for the past couple times around, having to go. He's still trying that outside line, but one thing that might work his way, look at a bit of the lighting. It's starting to get a little bit shady again. It's a partly cloudy sky today, and the track temp's still at 109. However, throughout last week, for many of the drivers on the iRacing service, they've seen track swings go from the high 110s to as low as the 90s in the span of 5 laps and back.
That's a big swing as far as temperature. Look at Jacoby poke the nose to the outside as they go by the start-finish line. He wants to run up there. He's on the right rear quarter. Oh, that was really, really close. He got to the outside wall in the entrance to 1, but Jacoby absolutely committed to that line. He is there now. He'll get the run off at 2. Side by side down the back straightaway, trying to assert himself out front, take the lead away. Reynars tries to pinch him against the wall, not going to be able to do it. I think Jacoby's going to be able to get back to the line first. We'll see how they get through 3 and 4.
A little bit of a slide. It looks like Jacoby's right rear tire as they'll be side by side. Who will get the lead lap this time? Jacoby. He leads his first lap of the day, heading to lap number 40 of 125. Reynars still stays on the inside, and look who's trying to follow on behind. The more they drive side by side, the more Eberhardt's probably thinking, this is my shot to make a move.
Oh, they're so close going into 3. Last time by especially, even more so this time by for Reynars, not wanting Jacoby to get that good arc into the corner. Jacoby fighting for all he's worth on the high side, but Reynars not letting him go. Once again, a dead heat basically back to the start-finish line. I believe give the edge to the 88 that time by, but this is allowing Daniel Eberhardt to close in slowly but surely as they continue to fight side by side for the lead ahead of him. One more time off of 2. Jacoby and Reynars going at it.
And they'll have to deal with lap cars ahead as well. Sean Callist as well as Brendan Johnson are up in front. Jacoby still stays on the outside for the time being. We'll see what they do when they reach the lap cars at the other side of the quad oval here. Reynars able to get the lead lap this time by. They're now approaching those lap cars heading into turn number 1 and 2. This could get dicey once they reach Callist along with Johnson to see how they take this.
Well, something's going to have to give. The message being relayed to Sean Kalis to get out of the way as soon as they get there because these two are just wanting to run side by side. So impressive. A handful of laps now as Reynars squirts ahead slightly, but Jacoby able to hold on to the right rear quarter panel desperately trying to claw his way back up there. Not able to complete the move. Reynars slides up in front. Jacoby tries the crossover. Reynars defends down into 1. Expert moves right there, and here comes the 90 of Daniel Eberhardt.
Eberhardt rides that white line on the bottom side, taking the Kevin Harvick line as Jacoby nearly scrubs the wall. Has to back out of the gas, avoids contact, but loses 1 spot as they file back to single file and move by Callist, who goes to the high side. So it looks like Jacoby tried too hard, knowing that was his shot to try and make the move this run. Falls back to 3rd as a result.
Yeah, I think he just absolutely used his stuff up. It was only a matter of time. He could not hang on the outside lap after lap like that. The tire temps really heating up in that number 3, and you saw the result nearly up into the outside wall. He's able to save it, so he'll have to gather back up. Lost some time, but better than losing the overall mechanical durability of the car by sending it into the fence. So for Jason Jacoby, testing the waters to try and make that pass, but give a lot of credit to Andrew.
Oh, trouble backstretch. Big spin on the backstretch. John Fowler destroys the front bumper of his car as he doesn't bring out the yellow. Ended up getting across the wall and getting a little help from Brad Bohr as he went around to the bottom side of the racetrack.
And again, another case of just get loose off the corner off of turn 2 there, Justin. And unfortunately for the 48, nowhere to go. Brad Bohr did everything he could, but just finishes off the 22 and no caution.
No caution, just at the edge of that apron too. Mind you, that is right at the cusp of being on the racing line to draw a yellow flag. Just not high enough to draw that said yellow. We continue to stay green on the racetrack on lap 46 of 125. As a majority of the field for the time being single file, but still a lot of battles as we've just seen so far across the track. Jonathan Cadell still sits in 7th spot for the time being behind Kyle Kammer, and has been quietly trying to find a way to work back by that 8 machine.
He has. He's come through the field. It has Jonathan Cadell. Meanwhile, Scott McClendon's going backwards. That car that was so fast on the short run, now giving up a little bit of speed here on the longer run under assault from the 91 of Greg Omo. So for McClendon, he's going to be the goer, and Cadell will be the comer, I guess, in this situation as he tries to track down Kammer. There's a lot of similar sounding words there, but for Cadell, again, backing up that great performance at Daytona with the win here, currently 7th at Atlanta on lap 47.
I think the thing he might not know yet is, though, he's got right front damage as well on the right front. That was after he scrubbed the wall on lap 39 on turn 1 entry. So that is enough of damage for Greg Omo now to be able to zoom by as they nearly door each other. Omo able to save it on the bottom side and zooms on by the 51. But some of the cars that have gotten damage and have not gotten a chance to repair it are starting to fall back. The reason the 8 didn't fall back as much when he had the right front damage, it was just a minor bit. The 51, it's pretty significant, at least 15 seconds of damage to be repaired on the pits.
Speaking of that 51, you saw right there, way out of shape as he tried to get the crossover done. Had to chase it all the way down to the apron through turns 3. Brought it up easily back onto the track, but more lost time for Scott McClendon. So he's heading the wrong way, and his tires obviously kind of buzzed right there as they go 3 wide down the back straightaway. That's going to be Jonathan Cadell and company going 3 wide to get it sorted out.
That was Bazemore and Callis. They both reached them at the exact same time. Had to go through the middle, as the lap cars are running completely different lines in similar pace. Cadell not able to make a move quite yet, though. But keep an eye, though, on that number 19 machine. That is Eric Stanford, as mentioned before, driving the SK machine. And currently gaining time and a bit quickly on Macklin. Last time by 2/10 quicker.
2/10 quicker and coming. He's running pretty decent time, still way off the pace being set by the front 2. Andrew Freinars, Daniel Eberhardt last time by 32.1, 32.2 respectively. The rest of the field in 32.5s, 32.4s. So a pretty big difference there, 2 to 3 tenths of a second between the top 2 and the rest of the field. Those guys are absolutely hooked up out front. Seems to be they're in a league of their own. Everybody else racing for 3rd on back, but for the time being, it's Jacoby, Macklin, Stanford make up 3rd, 4th, and 5th, but that 19 is on the march.
And so is Cadell in the 69. The Natural Light Toyota tries to run on the inside line. The SK machine of the number 8 on the outside line. Can the SK Sub Racing machine get on by again? Still keeps the position. John Cadell, though, had a shot on the inside line. However, though, the more you run on worn tires, the harder it is to get those passes done on the bottom, because all it takes is for the front car to pinch you down. You have to get out of the gas to avoid the contact. Not able to get the pass done.
Well, if there's a driver in the field that likes to subscribe to the you pinch, you pay mentality, that's the guy in the 69, Jonathan Cadell. He won't be afraid to keep his foot at it if he feels he's getting crowded. So for Kyle Kammer, something he needs to keep in mind if he's going to try and pinch the Natty Light machine down on the bottom lane. It may not go so well for him, but for the time being, Cadell falls back in line behind him. So that battle for 6th and 7th once again heating up as Kammer gets a little bit loose. Cadell loose as well, but gets the better run down the back straightaway. Here we go, side by side into 3. Here comes Cadell one more time.
Late breaks into the corner. McBride will fall behind as well. Kammer taking a bit of a higher line. Cadell tries to move them up the racetrack as Kammer nearly touched the outside wall. They'll be side by side. Kammer gets the spot for 6th for the time being. Cadell, though, late breaks his way forward for the time being. Can't clear him, though, on that bottom side once more. Kammer, though, trying to side draft that right rear and pinch him on down once more. They'll stay side by side once more.
I think there's a little frustration growing in the driver of the number 69. Team communication starting to lose his cool a little bit with the way he's being raced. He just wants to be able to get on past. No time to run side by side here. Kyle Kammer giving him a lot of room on the bottom, but it's tough when you're stuck down there. You feel like you're faster. You feel like you should get that spot away, and that guy just hangs on the right rear, hangs on the right door. But that's what Kammer wants to do. He's entitled to do that. Cadell's got to keep his emotions in check to get this pass done as they go down the back straightaway side by side again.
Interested to hear his driver communications? Go to live on Twitch at Steel Horse Live. to keep up with Jonathan Cadell in the cockpit as he stays on that inside line. Of course, had an interesting perspective for that finish at Daytona last week as he gets the spot to 6th.
Finally gets that pass done. And he exclaims with glee that he got the pass done as well. So Cadell up to 6th. Now he can focus ahead and try and track down the 19 of Eric Stanford. Again, the leaders pulling away. They can enjoy about a 5-second lead over 3rd place, Jason Jacoby.
And you may be wondering, how much time do you lose, of course, with the more you side draft? Essentially, these drivers were down to the 32.8 on the racetrack. That is, compared to drivers in clean air, about at least 0.2 of a difference. So that ended up losing a lot of time for Cadell, trying to gain up on Stanford, just as Stanford's trying to gain up on Macklin, which, of course, he's gained up on Jacoby, as you mentioned, because Jacoby, he's just started to fall off the table all of a sudden in the pace with the amount of fall off after setting the fastest lap of the day at a 30.423 earlier today. He's down to the 32.9, that's one of the slowest cars on the racetrack so far at this pace. Picked it up, though, a little bit to the 7th.
I have to imagine that some of the pace fell out of that 3 after the long run he made on the high side trying to get the lead away from Ferenars. Probably hurt the tires a little bit, and you see that reflected here over the course of the long run. Definitely the longest run that they've had in this race, now 30 laps in since that first yellow flag, I should say. So Jacoby hurt the tires. I wonder if he's thinking at this point it was worth it to try and get the lead away. Obviously, if he completed that pass, I think he would have been fine, but the repeated laps after laps on the high side definitely hurt him. As look who's closing in, Brian Macklin in the 30 going to the high side now.
Macklin seems to have a bit of the more fresher tires on the circuit as he tries to make the move on the outside line. Not able to gain up quite yet. Has that better run, though, by taking the high line. Huge difference in speed by 3 miles an hour as he checks up. It looked like Macklin tried to again use the turn 2 exit as a ramp to the backstretch. However, by the time he got to the back bumper, it was to the point where you'd have to dive bomb to have a chance to make a pass.
Still way too early as we're just about to approach halfway. Way too early for those dive bomb maneuvers. Save that for later in the run if you really need to. Right now, you're still feeling guys out to see how you can get around them. You want to keep these passes clean.
And it looks like some cars at the back of the field are starting to duck in the pits here for some strategy. Anthony Fredericks amongst the drivers who have elected to come into pit early. Jay Horton also a lap down for the time being. So a couple drivers are trying to change up the strategy just before the halfway mark. We talked about this not being about this distance, being just at the edge of the fuel window. It looks like drivers are going to try and gain as much time as they can by getting fresh tires now, and then lose the time at the end, hoping to gain enough time as they can by the huge undercut, rather.
Definitely one of the strategies that you can employ, and it might be one that's useful as you look at how much pace they've dropped off, almost 2 seconds now off of their best lap times, most of these drivers. That's an immense amount of time to lose over the course of a run. Now, we're further into this run, like I said, than we were the first time before the yellow flag came out. I'm not seeing as many drivers struggle with that transition from the corners onto the flat of the straightaways, getting out of control. Still seeing a little bit here and there, but not to the same degree. So perhaps these drivers saving their equipment a little bit better to get through these long runs.
Remember, restarted on lap 31 of the race today. We're now just past 30 laps in the run. The caution came out on lap 27 of said run as Ferenars moves on to the inside line on lap 63. Checking up big time, though, Fredericks with the fresher tires as he had to let the leader on by after coming out of the pits. As things getting a little dicey for a couple cars here and there. The distance between 1st and 22nd at the moment, 30.888 seconds, with a chance for that 22nd place car, Brian Springs, to go a lap down in the next few moments. But of course, as we cross that halfway mark right about now in the racetrack, let's take a look at your halfway report for today's race. Of course, the mid-race break for today's race is presented by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game with professionally organized racing from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, and more. Let's take a look at your running order as it goes, 10 at a time. And Andrew Ferenars leads the race by 1.13 seconds before the start of the pit window, with Jason Jacoby in third with Daniel E. Eberhardt as the sandwich in the meat. Brian Macklin's in fourth with Eric Stanford rounding up the top 5, with Jonathan Cadell in 6th. Rhett McBride's in 7th, with Kyle Kammerer now passed by both the Steelhorse Racing Machines to the 8th spot. Greg Olmo and Scott McClendon round out the top 10. David?
11th position right now is going to be Thomas George. Brad Bohr in 12th. Nicholas Caldwell currently 13th. Joker Johnson recovering from that early spin currently in 14th. Brian Lambert 15th. Jeremy Rittenberg currently runs in 16th. Brian Chambliss 17th. Josh Gerlach 18th. Kurt Rittenberg 19th. And Scott Brotherton rounds out the top 20.
Thomas J. George almost made a change to that path, trying to pass by McClendon as she started that read. But Brian Springs now a lap down in the 21st spot with the pit windows starting to open up because Andrew T. Jones ducked in. He's now a lap down. Also a lap down at the moment, Anthony Fredericks, Jay Horton with Tom Moreno 2 laps down after the incident early on. Jeremy Bazemore is currently still zooming around with no front bumper 3 laps down. But Jeremy E. Miller's been on a very alternate strategy and a destroyed car 3 laps down as well. Astro's been involved in 2 incidents today and is still chugging along 4 laps down 28th. Brendan Johnson and Sean Kalis rounds out the top 30, with Sean Fowler still on the track 9 laps down after putting on a new front bumper. And Skylar Shackelford falling to 13 laps down. 2 DNFs today. Bryce Whitson Jr. and Matthew Miller are your 2 DNFs for today's race. Once again, that is your mid-race break for today's coverage of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series, brought to you today by iRacing. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities, visit iRacing.com to sign up today. An interesting race here today as the drivers continue on lap 68. Now it's the question of whose strategy comes in. Where is Eberhardt's got problems? He hits the outside wall, spinning into turn 3. Caution flag comes out. Not going to be hit by another car. Just nearly got rear-ended by Jones. But we are under caution. Eberhardt had this problem in a couple races, and NIS fixed, I should note, it appeared, throughout the week or open. Now, he's destroyed the entire left side of his number 94.
Similar incident what we've seen already a couple times here tonight, I should say, all by himself down the back straightaway. Loses control, tries to keep up with the steering, can't do it. Slams the inside wall, comes back up on the track to bring out the yellow flag. Nearly gets T-boned up against the wall by the 64 of Andrew T. Jones. That should be an interesting onboard camera if we can get that one as he barely squeaks by. But our second caution flag of the night comes out here on lap 68 for a single car spin for your second place driver, Daniel Eberhardt.
It nearly became a multi-car incident, mind you, with the placement of where he was spinning on the racetrack and how he spun on the racetrack with how much velocity he came across. With Jones, absolutely had to check it up. He actually had to hit the wall, mind you, to avoid getting even worse damage. That looked like a case with Jones, who was on an altered pit strategy, mind you, where it was either don't have a car or be able to have just a bit of damage and be able to get to the finish as everyone ducks down to the pits.
Here comes all the leaders. Freinar's into his box. I see the 30, Brian Macklin, slid through his box ever so slightly. That's going to cost him a little bit of time, but why not take the opportunity to come down and get this service done under our second caution flag? Freinar's down and away. He will lead the field off of pit road. Give the lead still to that number 88.
And he's led just about every single lap today so far as he's out of the pits first. Eberhardt, who hit the wall and stayed in second, is done for the day. He has pulled out of the race a DNF for what was the second place car. Moved Brian Macklin and Eric Stanford up some spots, with Jonathan Cadell and Rhett McBride rounding out the top 5. Still, though, at the time of the caution, 19 drivers on the lead lap. One of the drivers not on the lead lap is Jason Jacoby. He got caught a lap down at the time of the caution flag as he was in the pits when Eberhardt lost control.
It appears that he's going to be able to cycle back, of course, onto the lead lap by virtue of the leaders pitting. I believe he'll be able to be waved around or something to that effect where he can get back, but he's going to lose a lot of track position. Certainly won't be third anymore. So just bad timing on that yellow flag for Jason Jacoby, who was up inside the top 3. Remember, he was challenging for the lead with Andrew Freinars, ultimately lost that fight, lost a lot of time as a result, but now way back in the running order, currently scored 18th.
Hold on, scratch that moment when you mentioned Freinars came out first. Scott McClendon has come out as the #1 car at the last time by scoring pylon after the pit window. That again is in the 51. And
he didn't pit.
Yeah, that I think he's going to have. I think he's choosing to either try and top up towards the two to go run rather, or remember that huge damage on the right front, having to take as much time as he can to get that repaired to not lose the pace.
That's a good point. I think he might be. Well, you look at the math right now on the fuel window. We're going to be what? We're at 55 laps to go right now.
So everyone can make it. Yes, I think it's more so damage than anything else in the case of the 51. As there are 4 cars, though, who can get the wave around. Horton, Jacoby, Rittenberg, and McClendon, pardon me, is behind them. Jones is a part of the wave around group, I should clarify, along with those drivers. Staying out this time, as this is going to get interesting if he doesn't come down. This would be, I don't think... I'm not sure about this one. The pace car lights are off. He is staying on the racetrack, if I'm looking at this right.
Yeah, this has the signs of a death sentence for Scotty McClendon in the 51, lining up on the inside lane. 44-lap old tires for him. Yep. He's going to be struggling on the restart. That whole inside lane has to be ready for the big checkup. This is like a golden pass to the entire outside lane, including Andrew Freignars. They're going to get free reign to just roll wherever they want for guys like Brian Macklin, who's going to restart behind McClendon. This is anxious stuff right here. He is going to have to figure out a way past that 51. He's going to be so slow on the restart, especially when we get to the banking of turn 1. This has wreck written all over it, if I'm being completely honest.
Macklin, a part of the race control crew today, just warning drivers, be careful on the restart. We got a car on old tires. And remember that point of wheel spin mentioned on the first restart after the first caution? We're going to see a very good example of it potentially right now. McClendon, the control car in the 51 on the left side. Freignars on the outside line in the red number 88. Pace car is off. He's off and away. He's spinning the tires like crazy. We're back underway as Macklin takes it 3 wide. McClendon forced into the middle. Everyone else dives its way to the inside as Stanford dragged against the wall.
He's already lost 7 positions before they even get to the middle. 1 and 2, almost drifts up into Cadell. All out of shape is Scott McClendon, doing the best he can to hold on to it. The field will work past him as they split him. Absolutely impressive driving here now. Joker Johnson, the 14, will clear as we got to fight for the lead. Macklin and Freignars going at it. Macklin on the high side, trying to take the lead away off of turn 4.
And still side by side for the race lead. Macklin can't get the lead this time by. Still stuck in that side by side battle for position as he tries to get the best run he can on the outside line. Freignars still trying to work that Kevin Harvick line on the inside. He slides back up, stays up to the race lead for the time being. However, look who's up to 3rd spot. It's Rhett McBride, who's shown pace, especially at the start of these runs. This is the furthest he's been up today in the number 5.
Pretty quiet run for the driver, the number 5, but now finds himself in that 3rd spot. Everybody benefiting from Daniel Eberhardt exiting the race after his spin that brought out that 2nd yellow flag, but a nice drive for McBride as he's right on line there around the bottom of 1-2. His caution flag, 3rd of the night, will fly here, Justin. Looks like maybe Jeremy Miller involved in this one.
And take a guess which yellow car was involved. Scott McClendon, remember? Forced 3 wide, then you have a lot of the wave around cars, and in the end, it ends up involving with the 44, trying to take it as high as he can to the outside and losing control after making contact. That is Kurt Rittenberg, who ended up collecting everybody else in the back portion of the field. A huge incident on lap 75.
You knew it was only a matter of time. They just could not sustain the kind of racing as these drivers were trying to get around the very slow 51 of McClendon on, again, 46-plus lap old tires. And just too many cars and too little space, especially on that tricky front straightaway. Contact touched off a lot of wrecking and spinning. Kurt Rittenberg, John Fowler, Skylar Shackelford, the 64 of Andrew Jones involved, the 26 of Jeremy Rittenberg as well. A handful of cars collected here on the front straightaway.
And now, as the caution flag is out, that is going to again bunch everyone up in the field, and now we might see some interesting strategy. We ran only a couple laps. We might see maybe possibly 1 or 2 non-takers. Macklin is one of the non-takers. Everyone else in the top 10 taking fresh tires. Also staying out, Jason Jacoby stays out. Tom Moreno trying to stay out as part of the lap car group, of course. But just a couple lead lap cars staying out here in this interesting strategy call.
I don't think Macklin got bamboozled into going back on the track.
No,
Looks like he made that decision himself to come back out there. 7 laps on the tires, Jacoby, 10 laps on his. Everyone else is going to be on basically fresh ones. So we saw what it did to Scott McClendon after 40-something laps, Justin. Now, with 7 laps for Macklin, 10 laps for Jacoby on their tires, got front row made up of guys who did not pit. How might this one play out with a field of drivers with fresh rubber behind them?
Indeed, right now, it can potentially work, mind you. The thing is, though, it usually is within 3 laps at Atlanta. The fall off on this track, though, and that time difference can be pretty big. In fact, it could be potentially as much as half a second, maybe as much as a full second on these old tires. Macklin, 7-lap old tires once again. Jason Jacoby is on 10-lap old tires. Everyone else is on fresh tires on the racetrack.
It'll be interesting to see how this works out. I'm curious what drove these 2 drivers to not come down pit road. It was pretty obvious that everybody else was going to, especially with still 50 so laps to go in this race. No real reason to come out and use that tire strategy, I don't think. This probably isn't going to be the last yellow flag of the evening, and now Macklin and Jacoby find themselves in a very disadvantageous position with that old rubber. And we say 8 laps, 11 laps old. Most tracks, it's not really the case, but here, this old worn-out surface with the high abrasion level, that is, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of life off of these tires. They're going to be struggling. Again, we're going to have another example like we saw with Scott McClendon. Maybe not as bad, but again, these drivers are going to be at a huge speed disparity. They're going to get consumed by the drivers behind them.
Here's the thing I think both of us have not discussed in this equation. A majority of those top laps, mind you, have been under caution. Brian Macklin's reasoning for staying out, just a lap and a half under green is how he calculated that and why he and Jacoby stayed out on their old tires. A majority of the 7 and 10 lap respectively, under caution. While that is an extra heat cycle, that makes it a bit more easier for those at home that are wondering. However, it still can be, after 20 laps, a big gamble. After 20 laps, if you get a caution within that, it can be big track position gained by getting that caution.
Can. Certainly can. I'm not entirely convinced at this point that this is the right call for these 2 drivers. They're going to need the help of a lot of cautions, and quickly, maybe in another 5 laps or so, that will drag everybody else down pit road once again. That's a big ask. We'll see how this plays out. They could get that quick caution, but Justin, I'm going to be honest with you, it might be them. As we saw with Scott McClendon, he wanted a quick caution as well. He ended up being the yellow flag. For Brian Macklin and Jason Jacoby, they may find themselves in a similar position.
I mean, I've seen it work personally. 1 lap to go, mind you, for the restart. It's just a matter of, are they going to be able to control wheel spin? And are they going to be able to maintain pace without having a drastic fall off the table? Remember, old tires at the front row. Macklin on the inside, Jacoby on the outside. Finish fresh tires behind that. Farinars, Stanford, Kammer, McBride, Cadell, George, Olmo, Johnson. Round out your top 10. Mind you, Johnson was involved in one of the cautions before and is in his highest point of the race. With so many cars either pinned a lap down or involved on incidents, this is going to get very interesting for this restart for sure as we head towards lap number 80 of 125 today. Macklin on the inside line of the Craftsman Toyota. Jason Jacoby in the Jason Jacoby 88 YouTube car, off and away. Macklin, good restart. Not so much Jacoby on the outside.
Jacoby back up in that 3rd spot where he's been much of this race, side by side behind him between Kammer and Stanford. Stanford way up the racetrack in 1 and 2. He's going to get a poor run off the corner. That's going to give the door open for Rhett McBride down the back straightaway as well. And here comes Jonathan Cadell in the Natty Light Toyota down to the bottom side in 3. But they're side by side for the lead as well. Once again, Brian Macklin to the high side. Freinars on the bottom with the fresh tires, making mincemeat of him. Freinars back to the points.
Freinars before that caution had led all but 4 laps in this race so far. Macklin drops back a spot, but look at Kyle Kammer. He's been showing short run speed all day long, has a chance to move up to the top 3. Doesn't have the better run though compared to Jacoby on that outside line. as he tries to find a way against Jacoby. Again, he's got the oldest tires on the racetrack as McBride checks up and forces the side-by-side with Stanford now.
Stanford go on up top, trying to get around Rhett McBride in that battle for the 5th position. And I guess this tells us just how good those tires can last. As look out, McBride way onto the apron, thought he was going to go up the racetrack and tag the 19. He holds on as the 19 will get ahead off of 2 down the back straightaway now. Eric Stanford getting up into that 5th position if he can clear. But for Jacoby and for Macklin, doing a nice job holding on those tires against the guys who had just pitted. Not as big of a deficit as I thought it might be, but if this race stays green for a long time, they may see themselves with the parachute out back, fading through this field. But for now, still 2 running 2nd and 3rd.
Speaking of parachutes and fading fast, Thomas George. He had been under the weather before tonight's race with the flu. He has pulled his car into the pit lane after being just outside the top 10. He has taken it onto the tow truck and is done for the night. So unfortunately, Thomas George done for the night with the flu, under the weather. Did apologize in practice if he ended up getting accidentally involved with the car. Looks like he is parking it for the rest of the night.
I got to give a call to the driver who comes out here when he's sick with the flu to come and do this. A lot of commitment there. It's tough when you have the flu. I know from personal experience, and those who are experiencing it within my personal circle currently, that can be a real bring down kind of effect on you. It can absolutely kill your motivation, do anything, sap your energy. So to come out here and try and do 125 laps at Atlanta, no easy calls. Look at this, the fight for 4th. Eric Stanford on the bottom side, Kyle Kammer up top. As they go into turn 1, the 19 gains another spot.
And Stanford showing a lot of pace today. You got to give him that. He's got one of the fastest laps of the day overall today. Fastest lap for him at 30.325. Last time, during this run rather, though, Andrew Farinars setting a 30.15. Last time by 2/10 faster than the drivers who stayed out. The slowest of the 2 of those who stayed out was Jacoby, who was a 10th off of Stanford and McBride's pace, as they stay single file for the time being. Are you wondering how we're keeping track of those details? Well, your coverage of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series is brought to you by one of the main reasons for that: Show Real Timing, the official timing software of LSR TV. Whether you spend your time on the sim or behind the wheel, on the pit box, or from the spotter stand, JRT is the go-to software for iRacing timing and scoring analytics. Get yourself a basic download for free. Get the pro version today at joel-real-timing.com. And of course, a great piece of software to keep track of things. Stanford wanting to keep track of a place to find a pass, as McBride trying to find his own place to pass in the River Watch Brewery machine.
Trying to find some running room, as it looks like Macklin and Jacoby are starting to back up to Stanford, McBride, Cadell, and others, as Farinars is absolutely gone out by about 1.5 seconds right now over the field, and just setting blistering lap times last time by, still running in the 30-second bracket, 30.9. The rest of the field, 31 2s and 3s. So again, 3 to 4 tenths of a second faster is Andrew Farinars, as we're inside 40 laps to go. Kyle Kammer sort of fading a little bit in the number 8, but you look at Stanford, McBride, Cadell in a prime position to jump all over those 2 in front of them, and Macklin and Jacoby with the older tires, and take those positions away. That's where the fight's going to be.
And the more they get bottled up behind the drivers who stayed out, especially Jacoby, the more they'll lose time. Last time by, Farinars setting a 31.2. Jacoby goes to the inside line. Nearly got the job done on Macklin, but that opens up the door for Stanford. He continues to be patient, though, still waiting for the right chance. He looks like he wants it now, taking the high side, as Jacoby squeezes him a tight touch up the racetrack.
The right move to make. You can't waste any time, because ultimately these guys trying to get past Jacoby and Macklin are trying to catch Andrew Farinars. I'm not sure they're going to be able to do it anyways, but look at this. Macklin and Jacoby way up the track, so Stanford and McBride react by going to the bottom. These cars all over the racetrack right now. Got to be patient to get these passes done. Remember, they got the fresher tires. They got to use them to their advantage as they come up on another slow car, so I have to put that pass on hold to get by the lapped car here off of turn 4. But for Stanford, McBride, really prime position. Just got to take your time and get that pass done cleanly.
And for some of these drivers, remind you, of course, they had either good speed or fell off. during the race at Daytona last week, or ended up showing that speed in the late going. Macklin coming off a top 5 at Daytona. Jacoby, he ran second a majority of the day, but ended up getting damaged in the late goings of the race and finished 17th. So he's trying to gain points back, Jacoby. Macklin trying to find any points he can to gain some time on Reynars, who, remind you, was flipped up in the air in that race. As Macklin goes back to the inside, Jacoby to the outside line. Will this get the job done this time? Maybe yes. Jacoby the faster run, off and away. Stanford nearly loses it to the bottom.
Getting into those stages where these guys get a little bit of trouble when they get to the straightaways. Those tires starting to give up, particularly the rear tires when they heat up. Just no traction with all that horsepower going to the ground. But Jacoby up to the second spot. Macklin back to third. Rhett McBride trying to figure out a way past these two drivers that he's got at least, 7, 8, 9 lap pressure tires then. Just can't do it. Now down to the bottom side through 1 and 2. Macklin up the hill. He's going to get that good run. Again, McBride nowhere to go. He's got a little bit faster pace, but executing that pass is really, really difficult.
They've just not been able to get to the right spot, I think, to get these passes done again. Look at where Stanford and McBride are, trying to take the high side. Some of them trying to diamond off the corner for a faster run. This time it works. McBride zooms to the inside line. Macklin to the outside. 3-mile-per-hour difference into the corner entry as McBride clears them. Now here's the thing, can he park the bus on the exit? Yes, he can, just barely. Able to just park the bus to get the job done. McBride up to P3.
That was an important pass for Rhett McBride to get done now as we get closer to 30 laps to go. Now he's just got to make one more pass around Jason Jacoby. Might come a little bit easier as Jacoby gives him the bottom to work with. And here comes Eric Stanford going by Brian Macklin as well, I should say, into turn 1. So side by side for second, side by side for third and fourth as well. Jonathan Cadell there in 6th. Don't forget about him. He's just been patiently waiting behind these guys. Oh, contact! Look out! Stanford holds onto it. Great job saving the car there. Wow, that could have been really bad.
Macklin apologizing, saying nice save after the contact from Macklin in the back bumper trouble behind nearly. Cadell nearly dragged up camera up the racetrack as he hung on the right rear of Cadell. That was nearly 2 big ones in the span of a moment as McBride moves up to second in front of them.
McBride trying to get that pass done, hanging it out sideways off a 2. I'm telling you, these guys are wheeling it for all they're worth. That'll allow Jacoby to get back around for the time being. McBride giving it all he can on the bottom through 3 and 4. Wants to get that second position away. That red dot far off in the distance is Andrew Reynars, about 4 seconds now ahead of the rest of these guys. What a great battle here for 2nd through 6th. Include Kyle Kammer in 7th as well.
2 more DNFs, Horton, McClendon. As McBride rides that white line, slides up a touch. Again, Jacoby, though, has the preferred line down the backstretch as he drags him on by. Again, a faster run, but has to lock up the brakes a little bit more harder as McBride tries to slide him up the racetrack even more so out of where that rubber is, as you see in that dark pavement, as Jacoby still keeps 2nd spot for now, files back to 2nd as McBride resets.
Remember, about 10 lap difference between these two on tires. Jacoby, 31 laps since he last hit pit road. Rhett McBride, 21 laps. So the 10-lap advantage, can that play into McBride's hands to get this pass done? Tried on the bottom side, nothing doing there. Now they'll switch lanes. McBride trying to search around this racetrack as the groove has visibly widened. More portions of the racetrack, less gray, more dark with the rubber that's been taken on. Look at the runoff of 4. McBride. Huge run. He might clear before they get into turn 1. He will. Rhett McBride up to the 2nd position.
And that time just timed it up right. And do you think in that case it was a case of Jacoby letting him on by, or trying to think, okay, he's got the run for now. Can I reset to get the pass on back? As he's near the back bumper, sliding through one of what looks like a smoke puff, because Tom Moreno just went off into the grass just to the inside of them.
Well, off the racing surface, don't think that'll precipitate a yellow flag here. But to answer your question, I think McBride just got a better run through 3 and 4. I think Jacoby slipped up a little bit on those older tires up the hill. But look at this. McBride way up the hill in 1 and 2. Jacoby peeking down low. This fight's not done. McBride loose off a 2. He'll hold on, but this fight for 2nd is not over.
Nowhere near done, it appears. McBride holding on to that middle line for now, taking away Jacoby's chance for the time being. But we've seen the past couple times, the driver who's been able to diamond off the corner and get the faster run off as a ramp, similar to qualifying, has been able to try and get the pass done. This time, cannot able to do so. So this is where, remind you though, the driver's majority of those numbers that my partner David Shieldhouse has mentioned were under yellow. The thing is though, is this, do you think the tires equalizing from the green flag laps on these tires, or is it just the case of, oh, it hasn't reached a cliff yet to fall way back in the field?
Only one person really knows for sure. That's the man behind the wheel. But for Jacoby, he's giving it a great effort to hold on as best as he can. You're going to hit that cliff eventually, but no quit in the number 3. Currently in that 3rd spot. He wants to get second back from Rhett McBride so badly, despite being at the 10-lap differential on tires. Still great pace in that machine. But I think when it's all said and done, McBride's going to be able to prevail just because he's got the fresher tires, no matter how much pressure Jason Jacoby applies.
We're under 25 laps to go. Farnar's apologies, is up to a 5.5 second lead. He's laying down lap times 2/10 quicker than the rest of the field. My goodness, up at the front. Has had clean air because he got by very quickly by Macklin to start off this run. And of course, showing the talent once more that he has as well. That led to his championship, where in some races would dominate to this similar pace. No one's been able to really touch him, it seems, today in raw speed and raw pace since the drop of the green flag.
He's been in a league all his own. It's easy to understand why he won 10 races last year, won the championship with performances like this. I don't know how anybody could touch him. It's not like anybody up inside the top 5 has any damage that's holding him back or anything like that. Freinar's is just that much faster as his fight for second's cooled off a little bit, but the fight for 4th and 5th is heated up. Brian Macklin is not going away. He is absolutely stalking Eric Stanford right now. Jonathan Cadell in 6th, watching out the front nose off of turn 4 as they continue to fight. So a couple of pairings of drivers going at it here. But, you know, for Andrew Freinar to build up a lead of 6 seconds in 28 laps, that's pretty impressive.
Very impressive indeed. He continues to dominate. The question is, though, will it stay green? This is around the point of the runs the past couple times today, where drivers have started to get very squirrely down the backstretch and on the corner exits, especially, to cause the last few cautions, in fact. Do you feel like we're at that do you feel like we're at that edge, rather, where that bubble might burst and explode down the backstretch, or do you think the drivers might be in that case where, okay, it's calmed down enough to this late in the race with 20 laps to go that is not a worry?
I just watched the 19 answer the question for me. He is all over the place on corner exit. That'll allow Brian Macklin to shoot to the inside. So we're definitely in the window right now where the cars are getting upset as they transition off the banking to the flat of the straightaways. Eric Stanford barely able to hold on. Every position matters right now. We're inside 20 laps to go. You'll take any position you can, no matter how you get it. So when you push the car even further as you're trying to defend or take that spot away, as again the 19 hangs the rear end out through 1 and 2 as Macklin tries to take the spot. The harder you drive, the more at risk you are for spinning out when you go down these straightaways. It's been 30 laps since the leader pitted. That was about the time we had our first yellow flag. So we're definitely well within the window, Justin, I think, for these drivers to have more incidents on the straightaways like we saw for guys like Daniel Eberhardt. Remember, he was second at the time when he spun out down the backstretch.
Yeah, and that was a huge one, too, in the race. He was the only our driver today that's matched the pace for Ringnards today. And now, of course, DNF for the race. He is currently scored 31st on the racetrack. Macklin, though, all of a sudden, has found an extra couple tenths all of a sudden compared to Stanford and Cadell. Now, so Stanford might have burned up that right front tire a little bit. Cadell wants to try and move on by them to have a chance for a second straight top 5 to start off the 2019 season as they stay single file once more. Watch, though, Greg Olmo. He's slowly closing into this battle as well.
Olmo about a second back of Jonathan Cadell as this fight for 4th continues. Oh, look out, big slide!
Oh, trouble!
Oh, he's going to hold on to it, Stanford?
No! No, he's not. He hits the inside wall, comes across the track, just keeps it on the apron. So Eric Stanford, who looked to have a possible season best run so far, done for the day. He DNFs the car after slamming the inside wall on what could have been a top 10 run. Wow.
Just so unfortunate for Eric Stanford. Did a great job here for 109 laps, but then it goes all wrong, and that's been his biggest trouble spot lap after lap. Over the last handful of laps, he's been out of shape going off of turn 2 down the back straightaway, and there just couldn't hold on to it, as you said. I think the right front was hurt, but I think the right rear was in even worse shape.
Yes.
So for Brian Macklin, he's able to get 4th. That'll move Cadell up to 5th, and for the driver of the 19, absolute heartbreak here in the closing stages.
I will say, well, this is a very stable setup, as mentioned, though this is, again, at that point where the right front stops burning as much, the right rear starts burning a lot. It's been described as the best setups are the ones where you're able to even out that tire wear or tire burn. That's very hard to manage and try and teeter-totter, essentially, to try and have the best race without snapping loose like that.
It's a difficult thing because when you've been dealing with a tight condition all race long, and then all of a sudden you're looking at the inside wall when you're going through the corners all out of nowhere because the right rear is getting hot. Look at this battle for second, both of them in that Larson lane up against the wall. McBride and Jacoby rim riding out there through 1 and 2. An absolute battle here between these guys. They're all the way up against the fence. When you're teetering on the edge of being tight or loose, not knowing what the car is going to do, it is hard to try and run the bottom. So I'm not surprised to see him running the middle and upper portion of this track, Justin. As we're getting down into the closing stages of this thing, McBride pulls away one more time.
Just about 13 laps to go and downward for this race today here at Atlanta for the 2019 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series Round 2 for the series powered by Sim Racers for Mental Health. As Jason Jacoby still rides in that 3rd spot, McBride 2nd, and none of them have been able to keep up with Farignars today, who's up to just about 8 seconds, this time by the stripe, with these two still fighting for the 2nd most points. The driver who finished 2nd, remember, was Thomas J. George. DNF today due to being under the weather. For both of these drivers, it would be their season highs as Jacoby tapped the wall.
Just stepped over the edge a little bit, did Jason Jacoby, as he keeps pushing. Remember, he's 10 more laps on his tires than the guys he's battling. 47 laps since he was last on pit road for service. So he's holding on for all he's worth. I'm sure he's got the elbows up, the hands moving fast, working the pedals and the steering wheel to try and hold on at least for 3rd. A great effort. If he can get 2nd away somehow, that's going to be a huge accomplishment for him to do. 10 laps is a lot around here, Justin. Both these guys pushing it to the absolute limit up around the high side.
Farignars coming to 10 laps to go down into turn number 3. Jacoby out of turn 2. Can't get the run to try and get by McBride once more yet. He's trying to get later in the brakes on the corner entries to gain up the time. It's just not sticking the way I think he wants to quite yet. McBride continues to defend that outside line, so it looks like Jacoby's trying some different things and trying to really abuse those front tires with the late braking. It's just not been able to stick to where he can get the run on the exit yet.
Jacoby's definitely making up some ground on entry. He's able to arc it down to the bottom, gives him a better run off a 2. That might be the key to getting by, but I don't think McBride's going to give him the high side to try and make that pass. He's going to give him the bottom to work with, saying, if you're going to get it done, you got to do it where it's the hardest. I'm going to make this very challenging on you to make this pass, but again, up against the wall. Look at the run off of 4E. Despite the wiggle, very even between these two cars as they work down into 1.
McBride also had a slight wiggle, had to touch the wheel a bit more sharper to the left before going down the straight. To the quad oval, rather. McBride goes up the racetrack as Jacoby rim rides the bottom side. They're back side by side for the 2nd spot once more. McBride on the fresher tires on the outside. Jacoby, who had to take a wave around at one point on the inside line. He stays on the inside. Can he push up to try and get a spot? McBride doesn't get the faster run. Jacoby, though, just gets the edge. This time by the stripe for the 2nd spot. Still under 8 laps to go for these two drivers.
You saw last time by in the background down the back straightaway, Brian Macklin way out of shape as Jacoby will complete the pass for 2nd to put him back up to P2. Brian Macklin, big wiggle down the back straightaway last time by. Jonathan Cadell took advantage of that to put Cadell up to 4th. Macklin back to 5th on the back bumper, and for the second position, Jacoby gets it away. McBride back to 3rd. Does he have anything left to gather back up and make one more run to get to that runner-up spot?
That's a major question with 7 laps to go for the two drivers. Jacoby again takes the outside line. McBride takes the middle line going into turn 1 this time. The clouds start to settle on in. It has stayed fairly consistent, the track temperatures today, around 107 degrees. It's one of its lowest points of the day, though, towards the finish. 105 degrees for McBride. They'll have to deal with lap traffic as they run on the high line. McBride cuts back to the inside. Jacoby slides up the racetrack behind Callis. This is going to hurt him. They're going to go 3 wide as McBride retakes 2nd. A huge mistake by Jacoby.
Yep, absolutely misjudged where he was going to catch Sean Kalis and went the wrong direction. Loses that spot. He'll close back in on the back bumper as they work past Fowler now through 1 and 2. So a mistake off of 4. Jacoby recovers nicely, though. It's going to be 5 laps to go. This time by the battle for 2nd is on. McBride back out front on the bottom side. Jacoby in that middle lane. Can he get back to that spot? These two have been at it for 30-plus laps. Call it 45 laps now, seemingly in each other's hip pocket. Side by side, dead heat to the line.
Past the point and no return for Atlanta Motor Speedway. Last time by, it would have been Jacoby in 2nd. Under 5 laps to go for the 2nd round of the 2019 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series season as Jacoby slides back up the racetrack. Can't make the move stick quite yet, though, as they'll have to deal with Astrop on to the middle of the racetrack. Makes it tight towards the bottom side. Jacoby side drafts McBride. Once again, side by side, coming to turn number 4. McBride this time scored in 2nd spot with 4 laps to go for the two drivers.
Again, no change out front. Almost 11 seconds to Andrew Ferrainars. He is clearing away, got this thing in the bag, but the battle here for 2nd, the one to keep your eye on. So good between these two, evenly matched down the back straightaway. Now Jacoby will pull ahead. Will he stay up there? Will he come on down to the bottom lane? He runs the middle. Again, McBride on the bottom, losing a little bit of ground, but he gets back to the throttle. He can hang on the left rear just so slightly, but give the advantage to Jacoby this time by.
And Jacoby has a huge advantage this time by. Had a much stronger run out of the corner with 3 laps to go. And now he's up into 2nd by 3 car lengths. So it looks like Jacoby for now has it secured. The problem is, though, there's still a couple laps to do things here. Ferrainars crossing the start and finish line now to take 2 laps to go. Well, the battle for 2nd still might not be done because Jacoby still has to deal with McBride for at least 5 more sets of corners. This time by make it 4.
This fight for 2nd calmed down for the time being. McBride might have used up everything he had on the inside lane, trying to get that spot away. Going to try and gather it up for one more run as he gets a little bit loose on the bottom. That's not going to help his cause. Cadell still in 4th, about 2 seconds back from this battle. Macklin about a half a second behind him, so Cadell seemingly in position for that 4th place finish. It's going to be white flag in the air for Andrew Ferrainars one more time around Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Ferrainars will now lap the 48 of Brad Bohr onto the inside line. And he's been nearly dominant today. Has led a vast majority of the laps today. All but just around 10 today at 125. But the man who dominated last year is back in his element. Andrew Ferrainars comes out of turn number 4 in front of the fans. He'll take the checker flag and win his first race of the 2019 season in the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series.
Great performance by Andrew Ferrainars. Jason Jacoby going to get back to the line first for the 2nd position. Rhett McBride going to come home in 3rd. Great battle between those two drivers. So entertaining, Justin. Lap after lap, they went at it. And Jonathan Cadell, Brian Macklin going to round out the top 5 here. Great runs for them as well. Remember, Jason Jacoby stayed out on that last caution. We questioned the strategy, but in the end, that's going to net him a 2nd place finish.
Mind you, after he took the wave round, he was one of the fastest cars on the racetrack and passed about 5-6 cars in that span of a lap and a half. In the end, though, Ferrainars able to lap up to 13th spot today. Scott Brotherton is his last car to finish on the lead lap in the battered and beaten Misfit Motorsports machine. But of course, an exciting race today, exciting battles here at Atlanta Motor Speedway, also known as Hotlanta. And it stayed hot throughout much of the day. But take a quick step aside. When we come back, we'll look at your finishing results for this evening's running of the second round of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series season, powered by Sim Racers for Mental Health on the iRacing Esports Network and LSR TV.
The most realistic online racing sim ever made. This is iRacing. Detailed laser scan tracks, fully dynamic real world cars, and over 50 series to choose from. 6 online world championships offering over $100,000 in annual prizes. This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of LSR TV and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Live Sim Racing LLC and iRacing.com Motorsport Simulations. LSR TV would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.
Welcome back to the iRacing Esports Network and LSR TV's coverage of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series from Atlanta Motor Speedway. It was a dominant one for Andrew Freenage today, coming away with an 11.869 second victory over an exciting battle today for second. Let's take a look at your finishing results for today's race, powered by Sim Racers for Mental Health. As mentioned, Freenage came away with the win today, leading just about every single lap, except for about 10 out of 125. Jason Jacoby came away in the second spot after making the pass in the late stages on Rhett McBride. Both drivers traded spots at least 4 or 5 times in the span of the final 20 laps. Jonathan Cadell and Brian Mecklin round out your top 5. Greg Omo came away in the 6th spot, with Kyle Kammer and Joker Johnson following them. It's a huge distance to 9th spot, 20.679 seconds back of Freenage today. Came away 9th after starting 32nd after being one of the 3 drivers not to record times, the highest finisher to do so. Nicholas Caldwell had a quiet run to the top 10 to get himself a good finish today. Brian Lambert coming away 11th today, while Josh Gorlock coming away in 12th. Scott Brotherton rounding out the 13 drivers on the lead lap, with Brad Bohr rounding out the draw, coming in 14th spot in front of Brian Sprains. Kurt Rittenberg and Jeremy Rittenberg had some wild runs today, finishing 16th and 17th respectively, with Andrew T. Jones, last year's Final Four finisher, coming away 18th to start a rough year, both at Daytona and Atlanta. 5 laps down was Anthony Fredericks. Had a different strategy on the race, got caught a lap down, got caught in incidents. Jared Ostrop as well, caught in many incidents today, finished 20th. Brendan Johnson came away 21st, 7 laps down, with John Fowler and Sean Kalist coming away 11 laps down, 22nd, 23rd. Skylar Shackelford came away 24th, with Eric Stanford after having a top 5 racing car hitting the inside wall, demolishing the left front and the left rear, and finished 17 laps down after a DNF. Tom Moreno, after crashing in the grass in 3 and 4, finished 30 laps down, with Jay Horton after being involved with the incident with Scott McClendon, finishing 35 laps down. Thomas J. George under the weather tonight. We wish him the best of health tonight, as he was suffering through the flu tonight for the race. Came away 28th after parking the car with 44 laps to go. Scott McClendon apparently did not realize that they were coming to 1 to go. It was indeed the strategy of getting repairs on that right front that he had issues with. Instead, he stayed out on 44 lap old tires, and it ended up causing a big one in the back part of the field. Majority of the drivers from that went to the finish. He did not, 50 laps down. Jeremy Miller rounds out the top 40. The rest of your DNFs, Daniel E. Eberhardt crashing down the backstretch, was in second at the time, 56 laps down. Jeremy Bazemore, Bryce Whitson Jr., and Matthew Miller round out your 34 finishing drivers today at Hotlanta. With that, it's time to say hello to the man celebrating in victory lane tonight. It's Andrew Freenach coming away with the win tonight by more than 10 seconds in dominating fashion, outpacing the field by at least 0.2 every single lap. Andrew, how did you do it?
Thank you. First off, thank you for that. And I really couldn't tell you. I came into this race, I tried probably 10, 12 hours of practice just trying to figure out the line that I was running, and I still feel like I could have improved it. But realistically, I think it was just save the right side tires as best you could, hook the line, and just kind of hope it saved tires. I felt like there was definitely room for improvement, but I don't know how we were able to pull away that far. I know at the end there, Jacoby had older tires. That was probably why. He would have been probably right there, and I know Daniel wrecked, so I'll take some credit for pulling away, but definitely could have been improved, and I think circumstances changed. There would have been guys right there.
How did the car feel throughout the day today as you were running most of the time in clean air, as well at times here and there having a battle with cars side by side? How did it feel?
This setup is really, really odd to me. It kind of changes lap to lap, where most setups are kind of the same, generally the same deal going into corners. But this car, the start of the run would go extremely tight. It would be plowing on exit. Sometimes you try to drive it to the line and just push up the racetrack. And then you hit about lap 15 where you get a little bit looser. Then once you got to lap 20 and beyond, it was sliding every which direction. You couldn't even floor it really out of the corners. So, when you're side by side with people, I was really side by side at the start of the runs. It felt tight. You had to be careful not to come off of the line and hit the guy next to you. But I'm sure once I started getting around lap cars there later in the run, you're just trying to hold on to the car and hope the rear end don't swing around on you.
And of course, how does it feel to get back to victory lane after being flipped up in the air at Daytona and getting back in the victory lane the first time since last season, where you came away with 10 victories on the way to the championship? How does it feel to be back here to victory lane?
Let me tell you something, it feels amazing. I know I don't sound too excited, but man, I am. I struggled all week with this car, and last year we started with 5 wrecks in a row. We're coming out the second race and winning. Last week, it's Daytona. It takes skill to win those races, but not as much as, say, like here in Atlanta. And you just never know what's going to happen next week. So to come back with a win, it'll gain us a little points. I know we still got a ways to go till we get back up there on the top of it, but it feels awesome.
Speaking of next week, we head off to Las Vegas next week. How do you feel about going to race in the Sin City?
Pretty good. I really haven't run any practice laps there yet, so I'm really going to have to work on that, see what it is. And realistically, I'm going to try to enjoy next week as most as I can. This is, maybe they're going to change the build to the new NASCAR package after this Vegas race. So I'm really a fan of this. I'm a fan of, having to use the brakes and actually drive it and having a lot of input. So I'm excited for it, but a little sad to see this build goes if it does in a few weeks.
We'll see what happens in that case. Again, congratulations on the win, Andrew. Coming away with an 11.869 second victory. Anyone you want to thank before you let you go?
Yeah, I really want to say thank you to all these drivers who came out. I had a blast racing around. I look forward to a great season. You guys for broadcasting every single race. I love watching them back. All my teammates, Eric Stanford, Daniel Everhart had a wreck there. Sean Kalis, go check his website out. It's sksimracing.com. They sell all your sim racing needs. They have electronics on there. Really, really good guy. Go check him out. He sponsors a lot of my teammates. Not really on my car, but a really, really good guy. Has a great sales there and whatnot. My brother for building a computer. All my friends and family for putting up with this hobby. I know it takes a lot of time, but I really do appreciate it. And all the fans for watching. I hope we put on a good show. It was a ton of fun to race.
And I think the fans did enjoy it today. Congratulations on the win, Andrew. Andrew Freenosh coming away with the victory at Atlanta in race number 2.
Thanks so much. And heads up to David Washington, too. I hope you're out there. Hope you're watching. Hope everything's good.
And thank you very much for that word as well. Congratulations, Andrew, once more. And that was Andrew Freenosh coming away with the victory today. And standing alongside with the man who came away in second and stayed out on that last run, we also joined Jay Jacoby 88 in progress. David Schildhouse is with your second place finisher, Jason Jacoby. David?
Certainly am, Jason. Second place finish here tonight at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Holding on with 10-lap older tires, battling there with Rhett McBride. Walk me through those closing laps, all the battling you guys were doing.
That was so much fun with Rhett. Rhett and I were talking. It's really cool how the top three get together post-race and chat about it. And Rhett and I were just talking about how great it was to be racing clean and everything like that. And we also talked about how we want to kind of put on a show because Andrew Freenosh is the best I've ever seen in the Cup car in iRacing. And it's always a pleasure to get to race with him and maybe pick up some stuff when you're running behind him. So while Andrew was out there checking out, Rhett and I, we had to put on a show for everyone watching. So speaking of, thank you so much to all the viewers for watching iRacing Esports Network, LSR TV, my stream. Happy birthday to Mackenzie. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you, David.
We saw you battling with Andrew Freenosh earlier in the race up on the high side, lap after lap, trying to get that lead away. Ultimately ended up losing some pace after that. That really hurt the tires, buzzed them up pretty good, and that what caused you to fall back from the lead?
Yeah, I when I was racing with Andrew, I was telling Andrew that I thought I kind of had the advantage on the upper side there, and then as soon as I thought I could take it easy on him, he fought back even harder. I'm like, oh shoot, I should have been fighting this whole time to get out like a full car length ahead of him, and I never did. As soon as I thought I had him cleared, I just eased up the fight, and he'd get right back under me, and then I'm like, oh, I gotta go start fighting harder again. And it's kind of embarrassing to say, you know, sim racing is not all that physically exhausting a lot of times, but for me, man, that actually, honestly, kind of wore me out a bit. So I just had to take a breather and fall all the way back to when Brian Macklin caught me. And when Brian caught me, I'm like, if a caution comes out, I need to have good track position. So I stepped up the pace again to hold on to third place in case we got a yellow and all pitted at the same time. But I had to take a breather after that one, so I just backed way off of Andrew and Daniel. And not to mention, like you said, I did buzz my tires pretty well trying to get the lead from Andrew.
We did get one lap led here tonight, important for that bonus points, of course, and you recover for that second place. I'll admit, I questioned the strategy to not come in when the rest of the field did on that final caution flag. Ended up on the 10-lap older tires. You and Brian Macklin stayed out. I questioned that strategy, but you were able to fight through and hold on for second place. So that strategy, was that something you had planned to sticking to of not pitting, or was it a last-second decision?
It was a last-second decision. I couldn't tell which red car had stayed out up front on my screen. It looked like it was Andrew, and then I got up there, and it was Brian who stayed out. I'm like, oh, boy, Brian is fast, and I'm so glad to see him racing this year. But I was hoping it was Andrew because I thought if Andrew and I were evenly matched, I'd have a better shot at the lead. But, of course, you know, Andrew pitted, and then it was bye-bye to him. He's going to check out. And Brian did a great job, too. But I tell you what, I I didn't know that. I'll just say this: I ran another league race before, and the same exact thing happened where I stayed out on the older tires, and I was able to keep track position pretty well. And I was listening to guys' team speak afterwards, and like, how does he do that? And I didn't. Maybe it's just my ignorance, not knowing that the older tires are that much of a disadvantage. I just kind of drove it, and I was surprised, man. I guess it worked out pretty well, but I definitely wouldn't have done it if I had any more laps than that on my tires.
Jason, you know the custom will give you the opportunity to say hello to friends, family, sponsors, and everyone else who helps you in that number 3 come home with a second place finish here tonight.
Thank you, David. Everyone watching, first and foremost, y'all are the bomb. Really appreciate having viewers here. And Seat Time Racing School, one of my main sponsors, they allow me to go out to these events and vlog for them on my YouTube channel. And they have the lowest prices on NASCAR driving experiences. So if you ever want to feel what it's like to drive a NASCAR stock car, and then you could use that input that you feel there and put it in the sim, which is what I did. It feels just like the real stock car I drove now. SeatTimeRacingSchool.com, lowest prices on NASCAR driving experiences. And Carbon Racing Solutions is my website, simracingjason.com. Ford Entertainment Group, the lowest prices on computers to get started in iRacing. That's a guarantee. If you head out over to my website, simracingjason.com, you can find out how to contact Jeffrey Ford to get your computer as well. And shout out to all my buddies, First Act Studios, Marco Evans, Misfit Productions, Evans Gardner, Motorsports, a couple younger friends of mine, and I'm forgetting one more. Sorry, whoever that is, but thanks again to all the viewers.
There you have it, your second place finisher, Jason Jacoby. Excuse me. Congratulations on the great run. We'll look forward to seeing you next week in Las Vegas.
Thank you, sir. See you guys there.
And that was Jason Jacoby coming away second tonight in tonight's race here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. The man who finished off third today is standing by with myself, Rhett McBride, coming away third tonight. And was the second part of that big battle we've seen for second. Rhett, how are you feeling about coming away with the top 3 tonight?
I feel pretty good about it, I guess. That was a really good race with Jason there at the end, and that's all we were doing was racing for second. I mean, Andrew was so fast. I was watching his line, trying to get up there to him, but racing around, 3 or 4 other guys, but I could see what he was doing through the corner, and it was pretty impressive. So kind of knew there by the time I got clear to some of the cars I had to get to or get through, I knew we were just racing for second. So it was a lot of, it wasn't great coming home third, but to race somebody like that lap after lap, you don't feel as bad. Jason did a really good job of saving his stuff, and that was kind of what it was tire management.
Indeed, right now as well. Jason Jacoby mentioned just a few moments ago with David Schildhouse how important it was for both of you to not only keep it clean, but to put on a show. What was going through your mind as that was all going on?
Yeah. Well, I always try. I race people like they race me, and Jason's just such a nice guy. I mean, that would have been like shooting a puppy or something to wreck him. I mean, he's so nice. You just, I don't know. It's like a force field around his car. You just don't want to do that. But no, hey, if he wants to race that way, then that's how I like to do it. It doesn't take too much skill to just drive it in deep and door slam somebody in the wall. So to be able to go lap after lap like that and put on a good show, unfortunately, Andrew was so fast it was kind of boring up front, so we had to do something.
Apologies for those that may be offended by I guess is metaphor. I think is the word I'm looking for, cliche, but an interesting one to say the least. But again, how was the car racing tonight overall? Well, because Freenosh, rather, I should say, said it was like back and forth from tight to loose, like a teeter-totter. How was it to you?
Yeah, believe me, I didn't mean to offend anyone. Peter's probably going nuts right now. I would never shoot a puppy. Yeah, the car was all over the place. And it just depended on at what part of the tire cycle you were in. And then the last 20 laps of a run, you're just trying to keep it from wrecking, So that was what was so cool about racing with Jason there at the end, is because we were both just, I mean, you're just elbows up and sawing it all the way through. So, yeah, there was a lot of it was a weird thing, the cycle that the tire went through and how you had to drive the car and where you had to find grip. But it was a lot of fun. That's what we love.
Next week, we go to a track that I'm not sure if you love or not, Las Vegas Motor Speedway for 125 laps. Of course, an hour, mile and a half, but of course, a different kind of mile and a half, of course. How do you feel about heading to Las Vegas?
I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I think it's going to be a lot like it was tonight. There'll probably be more grip there. Atlanta's just fun because it just beats the tires up so much. So you see that, and it's kind of hard to say what the conditions will be and what the fix set will be like. But it should be good racing. Be a little bit quicker, and the tires won't fall off as quick. So it'll be fun, different kind of racing. But I like Vegas. Looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it as well here. Anyone you want to thank before we let you go here tonight?
Yeah, definitely want to thank Riverwatch Brewery, iRacing iFlag. You can check them out on Facebook or go to their website at www.iracingiflag.com. Mention Steelhorse, and I think you're saving 15%. But they're really good peripherals for iRacing flag system display, and also Amsoil. Also, all my guys at Steelhorse Racing.
Thank you very much for the time. Congratulations on the top 5 finish and 3rd place overall finish tonight, Rhett.
All right, man. Thanks, Justin.
That was Rhett McBride coming away 3rd tonight with Steelhorse Racing. And what was an exciting one tonight with a lot of position battles and a very dominant race winner in Andrew Freenage tonight rather. David, your final thoughts before we head off towards the Neon Garage in Las Vegas.
Well, I will say to start, I'm glad that with still 34 races to go, we already got possibly the quote of the year from Rhett McBride. That's going to be a strong contender. A few more probably will make their way into the ballot box, but nonetheless, a great race here tonight at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Dominating performance, just a staunch display of driving from Andrew Freenage, kind of doing what people expected him to do and definitely setting the tone for the rest of the season, putting everyone on notice. He won the championship last year for good reason, and he is definitely in the frame of mind. He is back to contend and defend that championship. You want to try and get the championship away from him, you're going to have to go through him. That driver, the 88, very strong here at Atlanta, and probably will carry that momentum forward to next week in the desert.
Last year, as he mentioned, crashed 5 times in the first 5 races. This year, able to break that bad luck spree for the start of a season on race number 2. The question is, can he carry the momentum to race number 3? You'll have to tune in on iRacing Esports Network and LSR TV to find out. Once again, you've been watching the 2019 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series race number 2, powered by Sim Racers for Mental Health from Hotlanta. Of course, we'd like to thank all our sponsors again once more, iRacing, Joel Real Timing, and of course, Sim Racers for Mental Health for being the official presenting sponsor of Full Throttle for the RealSimRacing Cup Series this season. On Monday, March the 4th, the series shifts its way over to Las Vegas, Nevada, where the drivers will battle in the Sin City in round number 3 of the 2019 season. Will Freenage carry the momentum, or will we see a driver like Jacoby, Macklin, or someone else break on through in the desert? We'll find out next week here on the iRacing Esports Network and LSR TV. But for Brett Wheeler, for David Schildhouse, I'm Justin Prince, saying so long and have a wonderful night. We'll see you next Monday, in Las Vegas.